These opening quests are pretty boring. And honestly, the rest of the quests aren't even better. I've just never been a big fan of underwater stuff. This whole expansion's just been very disappointing to me because of how much I wanted to like it after coming off of Legion. And just the fact that I couldn't. I couldn't like it as much as I wanted to. And it's okay to not like an expansion. I mean, Warlords of Draenor did exist, right? But there comes a point where you look at the game and you're just so bored by it. And I don't mean by lack of content. I have so much to do. I have so much to do. I have unreal amounts of things to do. I haven't done any raid full complete. I could do every single one of them. But none of them interest me. Not a single one of them interests me. I'm trying to find things that interest me in this. But I'm more interested in Fashion Craft right now than I am in World of Warcraft. And that's a big thing to switch over to from being a hardcore player in Legion. I mean, hardcore is in getting AOTC and that's about it. You know, nothing like ahead of or cutting edge or anything. But like, you know, going from that to going to wanting to essentially play the game because I can look cool in it is not the best. I mean, when my favorite parts of this game are popping open collections here and seeing what I can piece together, there's a problem with your game. Because I've never been one for that. I've always enjoyed having the content, seeing things to do.
This vile serpent commands the others. Stop her!
Enjoying what I can and experimenting, but none of that sounds interesting.
The sentinels stand ready.
Guy, now look across the raids. I try to find something that's like, wow. You know, dungeons, I mean, there's cool stuff. I don't like troll shit. So, King's Rest and Atel Dazar and all that stuff are out for me. Poldegor, perfect. It's a prison. That shit is so cool, man. Big prison breaks, fighting your way through, like, up from the sewers, like you're going in. Like, that kind of shit is my favorite stuff to do in video games, role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games, what have you. Like prison breaks and things like that are just so cool. It's content that is not hard to do right. You just do it right. I think they did it right. And so that it's a big bonus. Underrot is like, why wasn't this in Wrath of the Lich King, right? It kind of sets out. A lot of them feel like these very disconnected stories within them. Like, okay, we have pirates. And granted, I haven't done the alliance leveling because I boosted all my characters. So I don't really know as of yet. Maybe it has something really cool. But like the cultiness of the Shrine of the Storm, I think it's awesome. I think that there is a lot of story in that can be just, you know, like things like that. It gives you a whole T-Mog set. That's badass. That is something that more games need to do, more MMOs need to do. Give out big, cool set pieces for doing dungeons. The only one I see that does that is Elder Scrolls Online. And then have your raids, right? It's a cool looking staff. So you have your dungeons, which the only one they've introduced, I think, is Operation Mechagun. You have that added on. I think Waycrest Manor is awesome because you're going through this really cool, scary manor. all this Wiccan stuff around, things like that that are, which this boss here was actually a personal inspiration for a tabletop role-playing game boss that I had, and he was super cool. Really cool boss in the game. I just thought that, wow, that model is amazing. And then you defeat Lord and Lady Waycrest. There's these witches and warlock kind of deal. And then you're still supporting the witch hunters, which, by the way, the witch hunters look absolutely outstanding. It's stuff I've missed from things like Warhammer. And then, oh, but we haven't truly finished it. There's a secret ritual we've been doing this entire time.
I need to get closer.
What? You mean to tell me you've been actually working on stuff? Like a ritual? Yep. And it summons this really cool looking boss down below. He's a large Titan looking, you know, obviously using the very cool skeleton Wiccan guy. Things like that are so flavorful, so cool. But then you kind of realize it has no real feed into the greater overall story. I assume old gods were involved with Waycrest Manor. Hell, I assume old gods were really involved in all of this. I know they were in Shrine of Storms. I haven't played Siege of Borealis. Looks like they are, judging by this boss. And I know that, like, Ashvane and stuff, they start to give their lives away to the old gods, which I knew this expansion was going to be. Everyone wanted it to be... The community wanted it to be a lot of PvP, and then they did PvE war zones. Okay. Well, you can't just be pure PvP, right? Like, you got to have content for both. You can't just be exclusive to PvPers. Because if you are, right, that's not cool. I don't really PvP. I might do the occasional arena. I definitely did them in Legion when it was very fun to do arenas for the weeklies. But I wouldn't be one to do any kind of PvP outside of that kind of stuff. Yeah, right. I got an award that directly fed into my gameplay loop. That's what I want. That, fine. You can have PvP, you cannot have PvP, but you're advertising it as so much of a PvP expansion, and people got that idea, and now you've shifted to old gods, which everyone, you know, that I spoke with were always like, oh, well, it's just a cover-up for whatever story's really going to happen. Sure. But none of that was conveyed. Take a look at every single expansion since the beginning. You knew what they were about. Even if you were going to set up some kind of big baddie to come in like an old god, that's fine. Hint at it a little bit more in your opening trailer. Oh, but it subverts expectations. Well, we had our expectations subverted with Game of Thrones Season 8, and you see how that came out. Like, and I'm talking purely story here for World of Warcraft, not discussing any kind of gameplay systems, which I'll get to. But it is weak. It's not fun. And it takes a hard pivot from whatever you were trying to do in the beginning. It's hard to picture an old expansion that did the same thing. Cataclysm both did and did not. Because we're fighting a corrupted being, right? But again, that was in the trailer. We already knew Deathwing's backstory. We already knew what he was about. That's okay. it's okay to know some things ahead of time. Especially if you're a big fan of Warcraft. I mean, he's a big Warcraft 2 character. Mists, it kind of did it. It kind of subverted you there for a second. If you think back to... You think back kind of to Mist's whole gameplay cycle, it really started with teaching you not to be so cruel to each other. That, oh, now that you have a common enemy, you'll band together. Meaning that you will always do this. You're closer than what you think to each other. You think that you aren't, because humans and orcs have to hate each other for some stupid fantasy reason. They don't. They don't at all. In fact, that's an old trope that needs to be taken out of fantasy. And I assume it will soon through new creators. But why have your story pivot when it didn't show it? So what I'm getting at there is, oh, let me get out of this, is, okay, so we see in the trailer for Mists of Pandaria, they want to bring us together. Right? This is the first time we're really not taking care of a big old Warcraft boss that we know of. That's shown in the trailer. We're seeing that, okay, well, you should learn to fight together if you're on this island. Because you're going to be swept up by the creatures that are within. Being the Shah. Essentially saying, if you keep down this path, and you keep going, you will summon the Shah back to Pandaria. Okay, they subverted to a new enemy, but it still set it up of who it was. An old god of some kind. Essentially, because Shah is really just a manifestation of old god magics and emotions. Well, yes, we got Garrosh, but Garrosh has been set up as a villain for 3 expansions at that point. Ever since that cinematic in Wrath of them in the Wizard's Tower in Dalaran, with Varian, Jaina, Thrall, and Garrosh, you know, you can kind of assume that it would be that sense. And he still never got his comeuppance in that expansion. In fact, they had to tell the story through a book, which not necessarily bad. I mean, there's a lot of Star Wars characters that are told through cartoons, which is perfectly fine. But then you move on to Warlords of Draenor. We know who we're fighting. Oh, look. The big bad is there. Gul'dan. He's trying to get the Legion. So he has his own agenda. Oh, but Garrosh has his own agenda. And so even though the story might have changed throughout the 3 patches that we're in, it still showed the Legion was going to become the enemy. And then we took a look at Legion cinematic. Obviously, the Legion is the enemy. Set up very well, I might add. I actually don't mind the whole alternate realities because of how it led into it. And because of the fact that demons are eternal no matter the reality. Manaroth was never killed permanently. So once you see that he has a way of getting his chance again, he'll take it. He's a pit lord. He's in an island. That's what they do. They're scheming just like the Nathrezim. Not as quick and cunning, maybe. But speaking of Nathrezim, you know, I watched Harbinger's Khadgar again pretty recently. And man, what a tragic way to get him off the screen. I don't know if you just couldn't get the voice actor anymore, if you just didn't want to have him around for a third expansion, which you've had Sylvanas around for, it'll be three cinematics she's in, I should say. But the fact that you didn't want to put Khadgar in, and you got rid of arguably your best character, because Khadgar is fantastic, especially if you read if you listen to that Khadgar Harbingers. That is top tier stuff. You got rid of him because essentially you're saying, we want to set up a bullshit expansion. We're fighting again. He's like, really? After the Legion, we defeated Sargeras, essentially. Us and the Titans together. And now you just want to turn tail and start fighting again? And that's explained in the cinematic, sure, by alliances are forged and broken and all that stuff, and the writing's just kind of weak there. Specifically because of a miscommunication on the Broken Shore, that Varian thought that he was getting turned aside, although the Horde was getting rocked up there on that ridge. The crew of it, right, is Crux. I don't know if you know words. Oh, it's a big miscommunication. But sure, but that could have been easily talked out. Instead, we find animosity keeps growing, and Gin finds in Stormheim, yeah, finds her trying to enslave the head Valkyrie. Pretty awful thing to do, but she wants her immortality so she doesn't go to them all. It's a bunch of ways to slow build Sylvanas' character. So then we move into Legion and go to Battle for Azeroth. We see the battle for Lordaeron, which never played out the way we thought it would, by the way. Which, again, is okay. Sieges rarely ever do. But it's all about Horde and Alliance, war fronts. We got Darkshore on essentially beating each other, especially when you hit 120, beating each other to their own game and things like that. And then we've had some old god stuff, whispers in the background, and now we're going to make that main villain. Azshara's here, which if they never put out the Warbringer Azshara, that would have never been anything that would have been so off-putting. And it still is off-putting. Just pivoting. You got Uldir, which is about Gahun and the Blood Trolls. And they might have some old god references. And then you have lore. Alright, a siege. Yeah. This feels like Siege of Orgrimmar, you know? But then it pivots again. Because you're fighting them. You see from the different sides. And then boom, Crucible Swords. Whoa. Old gods are moving hard. Which you don't exactly see in each zone. You only see that if you're playing Alliance. You don't see a whole bunch of the old god stuff with him because you only see the Blood Trolls. As far as I can remember, yeah, it was Titans trying to find a way to defeat the old gods. There's old god stuff in there. But you don't really see a whole lot of it. Why don't you just fight that bat and the large spider and stuff of that nature? But what I'm getting at is, it's not hyped up enough. it is not in the trailer of their, like, being some kind of old god influence after or during the siege, you know? It's not like they were showing play wise, right? There's a lot of systems. There's a lot of stuff to do. None of it is fun. I hate grinding AP personally. Like, it's just as a personal choice, I just don't like grinding AP. The Heart of Azeroth is not something I enjoy as a system. It's more passive. Actually, all the artifacts were. But it still doesn't have that same... It almost has a level of, why are you here then? Because even though this has the same level of increasing our power by an immense amount over the course of the expansion, it still doesn't have that same level of fun artifacts brought. A whole new button you can press, plus, you know, X amount of things, which is why Shadowlands looks fantastic, because you get both a Covenant ability and a class Covenant ability. That's badass. 2 whole new buttons you get to press. One of them is essentially a utility, because all the Covenant abilities are just utilities. But you might get a brand new weapon. Button. You might get a brand new utility. You might get a brand new anything. Personally, I'm looking forward to his arms to get Condemn. A new Execute that does shadow damage, and I can use it at 80% and 20%. Cool. That's crazy cool. But the Heart doesn't have any of that. And even though the AP grind is changing into something else, what Covenants are showing us right now is that it's going to be different. It's not just going to be the Heart and then you get your essences. And then, there you go. Have fun. Grind this neck up for no reason. No, it's going to be getting mounts, getting pets, getting titles, getting T-Mog, getting tons of stuff. And then each Covenant has its own weekly thing to do, its own bosses you can summon and fight. Like, there's so much stuff going on. I don't think there's not a problem to me of having too many systems. You can have a shit ton of systems, right? As long as they're good systems. We have our neck. Okay. Well, I also have to deal with getting these cool pieces in here. And getting a right, you know, ability. A power. Oh, and then I have to deal with essences. Okay, so now I have to deal with getting these essence thingies. Deal with that, and luckily now they're account bound. They weren't, so then you had to do them per character. You have your corruption, which is a needless thing. Get some cool ability, but get these drawbacks. Like, all right. And I haven't done the raid enough to know how it plays into each other. I'm sure it has a very cool thing. But corruption's going away in the pre-patch anyway, so who cares? But do that. Get these things. And none of them are fun. Oh, and then introduce this whole new rep and tons of stuff out in Nazjatar. Okay. I can level this guy. It's actually a pretty cool system. That's a good system, I think. Okay, now Nyalotha, get corruption, but don't get corruption. Because it could hurt you. And you can take more damage and all this other stuff. Tone it back. And take a good critical look at your systems.